There's something powerful about what happens after intimacy. It's not just about the physical connection. It's about the silence that follows, the unspoken energy that lingers in the air, and what you choose to do next. Most people think intimacy ends when the moment fades, but that's the biggest mistake. What you do after that moment decides whether your connection deepens or quietly begins to break apart. Because after the closeness, there's a space, a raw emotional space where vulnerability, trust, and energy live. And if you don't handle that space right, it can slowly destroy the bond you thought you had. So listen carefully. Do not forget to do these 3 things after intimacy, because they're what separate deep emotional connection from empty physical contact. After intimacy, something profound happens that most people never pause long enough to feel. The energy between 2 people merges and intertwines, creating an invisible thread that lingers in the air long after the moment ends. It's not just physical exhaustion or pleasure. It's an energetic exchange, a blending of emotions, thoughts, and even intentions. When 2 souls come together in that vulnerable state, they open themselves completely. Every layer of defense, every mask, every pretense falls away. That's why what happens after is so important, because in that fragile aftermath, the energy you hold is raw, pure, and incredibly sensitive. Protecting that energy means understanding that this is not the time to scatter yourself, not the time to grab your phone, scroll through messages, or lose yourself in distractions. And the energy you've just shared deserves silence, presence, and care. Every vibration that exists between you 2 right now is still alive. It's still forming meaning, still building connection, still whispering emotions neither of you may have spoken aloud. If you rush to escape that silence, you're not just breaking the moment. You're abandoning a sacred exchange that was meant to teach you something deeper about closeness, about presence, about yourself. When you protect that energy, you treat intimacy as something more than a physical event. You treat it as a spiritual one. You begin to realize that your body isn't just flesh. It's a vessel for emotion, for energy, and for frequency. And when you share that with someone, you open the door for their energy to enter you as well. That's why protecting it matters so much. It's about keeping that shared frequency pure, not letting it be clouded by noise, thoughts, or interruptions. Take that time to breathe, to feel what lingers in the quiet, to be aware of your heartbeat slowing down and your energy trying to find its rhythm again. That's when connection deepens, not in the intensity of the act itself, but in the stillness that follows. Protecting the energy exchange is how you honor both yourself and the bond you just experienced. It's how you show that the moment mattered, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Because when you protect what's sacred, it gives back. It strengthens the trust, the warmth, and the invisible understanding that real intimacy always leaves behind. Acknowledging the connection after intimacy is one of the most powerful, yet overlooked gestures. It's not about grand declarations or overly spoken emotions. It's about presence. The quiet kind that speaks louder than words. When the intensity fades and the stillness begins to settle in, there's a sacred pause where both hearts remain open. That's the space where acknowledgement belongs. It's in a lingering touch, a shared glance, a breath that syncs with another's. In those subtle acts, you communicate something words can never truly express. That what just happened was not casual, not meaningless, but something deeply human, deeply real. Acknowledgement isn't about labeling the moment. It's about honoring it. So many people treat intimacy as a fleeting experience, rushing past the aftermath as though it's something to move away from. But when you acknowledge the connection, you ground the experience in emotional truth. You let the other person know they were seen, felt, and valued. That small, intentional awareness builds emotional safety. A quiet understanding that says, I was here with you, fully. It transforms what could have been temporary into something memorable, something that imprints on the soul. This kind of acknowledgement doesn't need to be verbal. Sometimes, words can even dilute the feeling. True acknowledgement is felt in energy, in how you remain soft, how you stay close, how you don't rush to distance yourself. When you give that energy the space to breathe, it becomes a healing force. It bridges the emotional gap that often follows physical closeness. Without acknowledgement, the moment risks becoming hollow, leaving behind confusion or emotional emptiness. But with it, even silence becomes meaningful, carrying a warmth that lingers long after the physical act ends. To acknowledge the connection is to understand that intimacy is not just about desire. It's about recognition. It's the soul's way of saying, I saw you without your armor, and I stayed. It's a way of bringing mindfulness into something that is often treated casually. Because the truth is, every connection leaves an imprint. When you honor it with attention and respect, you turn the act into a moment of shared humanity. And that is where real intimacy begins. Not in the act itself, but in the tender awareness that follows. After intimacy, your energy shifts in ways that are often invisible, but deeply felt. You've just shared a piece of yourself, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And that kind of openness creates a subtle imbalance. There's an energetic blending that occurs where your emotions, thoughts, and even your inner rhythm begin to mix with another's. That's why it's so important to take time to rebalance your energy afterward. It's not about pulling away or creating distance. It's about returning to yourself, finding your own center again after opening up so deeply. When two people connect on that level, It's natural for boundaries to blur for a moment. But once the moment passes, you need to realign. You need to breathe, to ground yourself, to come back to your own emotional frequency. This might look like taking a quiet shower, not just to cleanse your body, but to symbolically wash and renew your energy. It could mean sitting in stillness, closing your eyes, and feeling your heartbeat find its natural rhythm again. Some people write down what they feel, not to overanalyze, but to release. Others meditate, stretch, or simply rest in gratitude. The method doesn't matter. The intention does. Rebalancing your energy protects your emotional stability. Without it, you might begin to feel drained, confused, or overly attached without understanding why. That's because energy that's not grounded starts to scatter. It leaks into worry, overthinking, or even emotional fatigue. But when you take that time to center yourself, you're reminding your soul that connection is beautiful, but your individuality still matters. You can share without losing yourself. You can give without being emptied. This process also helps you recognize what the experience meant to you on a deeper level. Sometimes, in the quiet that follows, truths rise. Emotions you didn't realize you felt. Lessons you didn't know you needed. That's why the post-intimacy space is sacred. It's not just recovery, it's reflection. It's where understanding grows. When you rebalance your energy, you step into a more conscious connection with yourself and the world around you. You become stronger, calmer, and more aligned, not only with your emotions but with your spirit. Because real intimacy isn't just about merging, it's about learning how to come back to yourself whole. After intimacy, emotions can linger in unpredictable ways. Sometimes there's warmth, peace, and connection. Other times, there's a quiet confusion that settles in, an unspoken feeling you can't quite name. That's because intimacy stirs up more than just desire. It awakens memories, insecurities, and an emotional imprints buried deep within. This is why emotional awareness after intimacy is vital. It's about noticing what rises within you once the physical closeness fades. It's about being honest with yourself, about what you felt, what you needed, and what that moment truly meant to you. Most people skip this step. They move on quickly, pretending the emotions that come afterward don't exist. But the truth is, those feelings are messages. They're your subconscious trying to speak to you. Maybe you felt safe. That's a sign of alignment. Maybe you felt empty. That's a sign something deeper needs attention. Emotional awareness helps you listen to those signals instead of suppressing them. Because what goes unacknowledged eventually becomes heavy. It sits in the background, shaping how you see intimacy in the future. Being emotionally aware doesn't mean overthinking every detail. It means allowing yourself to feel without judgment, without resistance. You don't have to label the emotions as good or bad. You just have to witness them. Let yourself breathe into the silence and observe what remains. When the physical intensity fades, do you feel comforted, connected, distant, or unsure? Each feeling has its own truth. By recognizing it, you prevent emotional buildup and learn more about your own inner world. When you cultivate this awareness, you begin to understand that intimacy is not just a physical act, it's emotional exposure. It reveals who you are beneath the surface, how you love, how you trust, and how you heal. The more you learn to sit with your emotions afterward, the stronger your emotional intelligence becomes. You start creating connections that are conscious, not impulsive. You start giving your heart space to process, rather than forcing it to move on too quickly. Emotional awareness after intimacy is a form of self-respect. It's how you protect your peace while staying open to connection. Because when you honor your emotions, you honor your truth, and that truth becomes the foundation for deeper, healthier, and more meaningful relationships with both yourself and others. After intimacy, there's often a quiet transition that goes unnoticed. The shift from shared emotion back into individuality. In that in-between space, it's easy to forget yourself, to lose the boundary that separates your energy from another's. That's why reclaiming your emotional independence after intimacy is so essential. It's not about coldness or detachment. It's about remembering that while connection is beautiful, self-connection is vital. You can be close to someone and still remain centered within yourself. In fact, true intimacy only thrives when both people are rooted in their own emotional strength. When you share such a vulnerable space, your energy intertwines with theirs. You feel what they feel, sometimes even carrying emotions that aren't entirely your own. If you don't consciously come back to yourself, you may start to blur the line between your emotions and theirs, mistaking their energy for your own. That's why, after intimacy, take a moment to breathe yourself back into focus. Feel your heartbeat, your breath, your thoughts. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What belongs to me? And what doesn't? This simple awareness helps you maintain emotional clarity and prevents you from losing your sense of self in someone else's presence. Emotional independence doesn't mean shutting down or withdrawing. It means allowing the connection to exist while also holding space for yourself. You can still feel love, warmth, or tenderness, but you anchor it within your own energy, not depend on someone else to validate it. This keeps your emotions balanced and your boundaries intact. When you do this consistently, you begin to experience intimacy as an exchange, not an escape. You share because you choose to, not because you need to. Reclaiming emotional independence also helps prevent emotional exhaustion. When your sense of self remains steady, you don't feel drained or lost afterward. Instead, you feel whole, grounded, and calm. You walk away with peace not emptiness. That's the difference between attachment and connection. One clings out of fear, and the other flows out of strength. After every intimate experience, take time to return to yourself. Whether through silence, reflection, or stillness, remind your soul that it belongs to you first. When you can love deeply and still stand firmly in your own energy, you experience intimacy in its purest form, not as dependency, but as freedom shared between two whole beings. After intimacy, the body may relax, but the mind often begins to wander. Thoughts start to surface, some soft, some uncertain, some heavy. It's in this quiet space that reflection becomes powerful. Reflection after intimacy isn't about analyzing or judging what happened. It's about understanding what it meant to you. Every intimate moment carries a message about your desires, your emotions, your boundaries, and even your growth. When you take time to reflect, you allow yourself to learn from that experience instead of letting it fade away unnoticed. Reflection begins with awareness. Sit in stillness, even for a few minutes, and listen to what your body and heart are saying. How do you feel right now? Peaceful, fulfilled, anxious, or distant? Every emotion is a clue. When you observe it without resistance, you begin to see patterns. What brings you closer? What drains you? What heals you? And what hurts you? Intimacy can teach you a lot about your emotional needs if you're willing to reflect with honesty. It reveals what kind of connection nourishes your soul and what kind of closeness may not align with your truth. This reflection isn't only about the other person, it's about you, your choices, your boundaries, your emotional depth. It's about asking yourself, did I feel safe being myself? Did I express what I truly felt? Did this experience bring me closer to who I want to be? These gentle questions invite self-awareness, and that awareness is what transforms experiences into wisdom. Without reflection, intimacy can become repetitive, a cycle of temporary moments with no growth. But when you reflect, even a single moment can evolve you emotionally and spiritually. Reflection also allows healing. Sometimes, intimacy can stir old wounds, memories of rejection, abandonment, or fear. When you pause to reflect, you give yourself the space to feel and release what was triggered. You don't suppress it, you transform it. This is where maturity begins, in the willingness to face what intimacy reveals about you. When you make reflection a ritual after intimacy, you stop viewing closeness as just an act of passion and begin seeing it as an act of consciousness. You honor what you shared, you understand what you felt, and you grow from what you learned. In that awareness, intimacy becomes more than physical connection. It becomes a mirror reflecting your evolution, your healing, and your truth.